The dawning of a new era in CSB sports.
We're so awesome that even our school wants us. You got to come on here. AllNoiseRadio.com, baby. We need your support. We appreciate your support. Look forward to our show every week.
With our new lunchtime spot, 12 to 1, bringing you a wide variety of topics in the world of sports.
Hockey, basketball, baseball, football. Get ready.
We work hard. Love sports.
The knowledge.
I just want to make you look bad, Ruggs, because you always make me look bad with your sports intellect.
The passion.
Hey, Jimmy, you're going to be the best-looking guy on the unemployment line, buddy. What a disgrace.
It's the Zuki and Ruggs Show on All Noise Radio.
Live from the CSB studios in Stratford, Connecticut, it's the Zuki and Ruggs Show, covering a wide variety of topics in the world of sports. I'm Ruggs, and I'm joined by my partner Zuki, and we're here to talk some March Madness. A happy St. Patrick's Day. Aaron Gobrada, everybody out there, one and all. Zook, what's up, buddy?
Top of the morning to you, laddie.
Back from Vegas?
Yeah, baby. I could have used the luck of the Irish over there, you know. Unfortunately, I didn't have a four-leaf clover in my pocket in Vegas, but glad to be back. It's good to be back. Unfortunately, I didn't bring any good weather back with me, but
No, you sure didn't.
Yeah, sorry about that. I didn't bring much money back with me either. Hey, it is St. Patty's Day. Spring's eventually going to get here. I'm believing that. I'm holding on to hope there. You know, obviously the big story of the day, Ruggs. College basketball time, baby. With March comes the madness,
That's
brother.
That's right. It certainly does.
March Madness. Ooh, yeah.
And it got a nice start with championship week. Lots of interesting things happened over the course of this past 9-10 days or so, leading up into Selection Sunday. We offered a few surprises, to say the least, and maybe some people that were a little shocked with the way things, the outcome of some things.
Some fantastic finishes as well. My God. It's almost a tough act to follow for the NCAA tournament. The conference championship games, the way they ended, I mean, looking at the St. Louis-St. Bonaventure game there with the 3 at the buzzer, you know, we got, God, I mean, what other games? You got the Seton Hall stunning Villanova in the Big East tournament. We did say when I was in Vegas that, you know, you see these teams that get desperate, they play hard, and they end up winning the conference tournament. I was kind of alluding to that with Arizona when I was out there. Unfortunately, you know, I was leaning towards Colorado. I believe me and Ruggs kind of were leaning towards Colorado. But it was UCLA that pulled a stunning upset over Arizona to capture the Pac-12 championship. We had also Syracuse, which is another typical Jim Boeheim-led fate for Syracuse. They just pull up a stinker against NC State. Just some real surprises, real big upsets, and some fantastic finishes. I mean, hell, the Kentucky game last night against Florida, they almost came back and stole that game. They almost came back and stole the SEC title from Florida. So some great games. And like I said, it's going to be a tough act to follow for the NCAA tournament. But when you have this many games, we're sure to get some great games as we usually do.
Yeah, I'll tell you, a lot of times, Zuki, this is the better week. A lot of times the championship week outdoes the tournament.
Mm-hmm. And this may very well be the case, Ruggs, to be honest with you. I mean, I agree with that.
You can't manufacture that kind of inter-conference hatred that you get between the schools and the fan bases that in the NCAA tournament. It's tough to do it unless sometimes you strike gold with some good matchups and you get them locally for the people who can travel to the games and you get a good atmosphere. But in these big cavernous buildings in the NCAA tournament, you got half-full gyms. You got teams playing that have no historical rivalries with each other. It just isn't the same.
Right. I mean, and you could see it in the conference tournament. This is pure emotion. Those games were based on pure emotion, pure hatred, and pure desperation, which makes the games even more exciting. You had teams that needed to win the conference tournament in order to make it into the NCAA tournament, and a few teams did do so.
Yeah, you just spoke of NC State. That's prime example right there. They got themselves in. They were nowhere near even really being discussed for a bubble. I went online to look at the bubble teams for right before the championship week, the big conferences start. NC State wasn't even considered to be a bubble team. They win the 2 games in the ACC tournament, with the win over Syracuse being the real big one. And then they pushed Duke into the second half in the semifinal, and all of a sudden they're in the tournament. Just kind of came out of nowhere. And that's the kind of thing that can happen in championship week, which makes it even more exciting.
Yeah.
Also more disturbing for some teams, though, that find themselves on the wrong side of that. And we'll get into that later.
Exactly. Any teams that were title favorites that you watched in the conference tournament and now are worried about? Is there a team that, say, for me, I'll say right now, to me, Syracuse really worries me.
Yeah, see, I called NC State beating them, so that didn't shock me. I actually think that Syracuse will do okay in the tournament.
Okay.
I'll tell you some teams that surprised me that I didn't think were as good as they showed up to be, and I'll take it on the chin for that because I picked a lot of, I obviously missed a lot of games, but anybody's going to do that.
Yeah.
But Iowa State I slept on. I didn't think they were as good as they were, and they came through and won the conference tournament. Same thing with UCLA. I didn't see them even winning a game in that tournament, and they won the whole thing. That's another team, still Steve Alford's guys. Great job with them this year. Talent-laden team doesn't always show up to play, though, and that's the thing. You don't know what you're going to get with them. We're going to see that again in the NCAA tournament. Whether they show up to play or not is going to write the ticket on how far they'll go because they're certainly talented enough. Kentucky's another team that falls into that mold, but I knew in the SEC tournament that it's like the Kentucky Invitational. They always play hard there and play well, and they always get a huge fan base to travel with them that they play for. And saw that yesterday. It almost was enough to pull it out against Florida. That didn't surprise me so much. I thought they would do that. As far as teams I saw, and I didn't give Virginia enough credit, and I'll take that on the chin. I didn't think Virginia was going to stand up to the conventional powerhouses in the ACC. They always kind of are a weaker sister since the days of like Ralph Sampson when they were world beaters in college basketball. They haven't been anywhere near that since. It's been a long, long time. And I just thought this was going to be another year where North Carolina or Duke was going to beat them. And it didn't happen. They got a little bit of a break in the draw, I think, not having to face the North Carolina Tar Heels in the semifinals. I think Pittsburgh is just a very pedestrian, average ball club, and they got them in the semifinals. I think that helped, but they stood up and they beat Krzyzewski and Duke, and it was kind of great to see. This guy's turning into a clown. I don't care how many wins the guy's got. He just acts like a complete impetuous child, throwing his marker and it hits his assistant coach Wojciechowski in the leg. Did you see that?
Yes,
Zuki? I
did. Yes,
what a creep. I mean, then he sends him to go do his halftime interview for him. I was Wojciechowski, man. I'd have been like, do your own interviews. You're going to throw stuff at me. Just unbelievable. This guy, how he gets away with this stuff. But that's what wins will do for you.
Yeah, it's a little ridiculous, Krzyzewski, and the fact of the matter that he acts so sanctimonious at times. And then he acts like a child, as you said. It's a real surprise. It's one of the reasons I can't stand him. I've never liked Krzyzewski. But, people will jump on the bandwagon. People like winning, and so people will support Krzyzewski. The media loves him. The MSM is all over Krzyzewski, and because he's a story, all he does is win. And
right. It's not like he can't coach basketball, but
right.
It's his methods that are in question. But so that was that was my other big surprise, was not giving enough credit to Virginia in the ACC tournament. Cool,
man. Cool. Well, that's the way it goes. But all right, getting away from that, Ruggs. Real quick, I wanted to ask you a question. It's a subject that is on our minds, and I think it's a real big issue: the seeding and the selection. Basically, the selection committee. A couple teams that really, to me, got a raw deal. I'm going to go number one, not even close. How's SMU not in this tournament? How's SMU not even in the Final Four to compete for a 65th spot? I mean, to me, it's borderline inexcusable, and I mean, it just exemplifies and embodies the ineptitude of the selection committee. And then I got to hear Ralph Shaheen on ESPN, justifying these guys. Stop it. Shut up. St. John's I won't go too crazy about. I think if they had won a game in the Big East tournament, done a little bit more in that tournament, perhaps they would have made it. I don't know, Ruggs. What do you think about the selection committee? What are your thoughts on this whole thing, man?
Well, Zook, I'll start right off. I think the seeding was just a disgrace overall. Just a terrible job. They went at the at-large teams, the bubble teams. They went big conference. Some years, it's like an agenda. They go big conference some years, little conferences other years, and they give the little guy a chance. I honestly don't care which way you go, but got to be consistent. They went big conferences this year for all the at-large bids. Doesn't bother me, but to then leave a team like SMU, who's a top 25 team, a team that's ranked in the top 25 when the year ends, a team with over 20 wins. They swept Connecticut this year. They beat Memphis. They were finished third in the league. Basically, overall, they just told this new American Conference, which I called it a bastard league last week on the show.
You sure did.
That's what it is.
It is.
It's ragtag teams that either half of them don't want to be there and the other half are just glad to be there and just to get to be a joiner in a conference that supposedly is a power conference. Give me a break. It's not a power conference. When you tell the defending national champion Louisville, one of the hottest teams in the country that's on an enormous winning streak, wins by an average of over 30 points a game in a conference tournament that has a lot of good teams in it, that they're a 4 seed. Give me a break. That's ridiculous. Then you tell Connecticut, a team that has won 3 national championships in the past. I know you don't go by past performance, but they got a guy in Shabazz Napier, player of the year in that conference, who was on one of the national championship teams, the last one they just had. Senior leadership on that team, and you're going to tell them they're a 7 seed. You're going to put, I'll live with Memphis as an 8. That's fine. But then you're going to tell me that Cincinnati's a 5. They were conference champions, another team that was in the top 10. They were in the top 10 in the country up until the final week of the season going into championship week. They're a 5 seed, and then you're going to tell me that SMU's not in the tournament at all, and they have wins over all the aforementioned
ridiculous
teams. Just absolute garbage.
It is. It is. I don't know what needs to be done. The problem is anytime people who are or can be influenced by money, make selections, there's a problem. It's problematic, and we're seeing it now. You're right, Ruggs. You nailed some great points there, Ruggs. And the seeding is, I'm looking at the bracket right in front of me, and it's a joke. I'm filling out the bracket, and I'm saying to myself, I've got 2 national championship teams here at 4 seeds.
Yeah.
And I was watching the show Bracketology last night, and you got these guys on ESPN laughing. They're like, really? It's like, I got Michigan State winning the whole thing. They're a 4. You got
another team that was badly underseeded.
Terribly underseeded. It's a joke.
I mean, we made the point about NC State. NC State, to me, had.
I mean, some of these teams that are in here
they had a good 24 hours. They won 2 games in about a 24-hour span and went from nowhere to in the tournament.
Did Coastal Carolina win their conference? They did, right?
Yes.
They did. They did.
Anybody anybody a 13 or lower.
There's so many conferences. It's hard to even keep up with who won their conference. That's the problem.
That may be part of the problem.
That is part of the problem, because there's an automatic bid, so a team like SMU gets bumped, and that's another issue. But I still, there's no reason why SMU couldn't make it into this group of 16 here to fight for the last 4 spots.
No, absolutely.
There's no reason why there's room for SMU here. SMU is not the 70th ranked team in the country. Right. That's a joke.
Right.
That is disgrace.
You could have left out North Carolina State, even though I think that they could do a little bit of damage potentially in this tournament.
Yeah.
If they deserve to be in it or not. You could have left a team like Nebraska out. They're borderline.
Yeah.
They played their way in a little bit too, but they didn't have the season SMU had. Dayton's another example. They're as an 11 that could have been left out. Iowa and Tennessee, the 2 teams that are going to play in that first round for that 11 seed, both of those teams could have been left out, particularly Tennessee. They really could have been left out of the tournament and not been brought in over SMU. Neither one of those teams, though, deserve to be in more than SMU.
That's a good example. You're right, Ruggs.
So just to kind of hit the brakes on this for a second, though, did you watch last night that Requiem for a Big East show, 30 for 30 on ESPN?
Oh, I was getting into it, but I didn't watch the whole thing. I
ended up having a DVR the last half, but great show. They did a great job, and it just Requiem is a term for Mass of the Dead, and that's. These creeps in the NCAA, they've tried to kill that conference. I got to speak from the heart here, because this is a conference that I formerly was a part of.
Damn right.
But the Big East, they try to kill that conference in any way they can. And I'll tell you right now, the best tournament in the country this year as far as excitement level and the best atmosphere, and by far the best championship game to watch out of all the ones I watched, and I watched a couple dozen of them this week over the course of the championship week, was the Big East tournament.
You're right.
And you had teams that had Creighton had no affiliation with this league at all. They have no history, and this is a first-time performance against a team from Rhode Island, against a team from Omaha. No rivalry whatsoever. That Garden was electric. The Big East tournament, what these incompetent idiots have done to this conference and tearing it apart and sending all these waywards and the greedy, I don't even want the word I want to say, I can't even say it. The greedy people that have just destroyed this conference and gone every which way, that have just sunk it into the ground. They like to take parts of their anatomy off with a butter knife. I've got to be honest with you. Very, very bitter to the subject. Really brought it home when I watched that program last night.
Yep.
What that league used to be and how special it was. And now you got this American conference that gets just got totally disrespected with the way their teams were seeded and whether or not they were left in or out of the NCAA tournament. And what you saw that the Madison Square Garden atmosphere was able to do for a game between Providence and Creighton was unbelievable.
Electric. Yes, it was. Yep.
And I thought that whole tournament was great, and just shame on college basketball for allowing the Syracuses of the world, the Boston Colleges of the world, the Pittsburghs of the world, the Connecticuts of the world, not to be a part of that conference like they were years ago, and to break it up the way they've done it. Because can you imagine what that conference tournament would have been like if it was left intact the way it was with all those teams?
It would have been electric, and it was. But the problem is you have a lot of these constituents, with big money who don't like the East Coast. That's the problem. You have a lot of these guys out west and down south who hate us, and they enjoy nothing more than to see us suffer and to try to knock us down. And I love the fact that the New York crowd and basically spited them and said, "Oh yeah, you want to give us this? Well, we're still going to rock the house. We're still going to we're still going to make this tournament. We're going to give this tournament some meaning, and we're going to cheer. We're not going to sit on our hands, and we're going to up yours." And I really admire the crowds for that. And it was some great games. I just go back to that 2011 Big East tournament when UConn, with Kemba Walker hit those game-winning shots. That was one of the most
fantastic,
the best Big East. It still gives me chills to this day. That was the best Big East tournament I've ever seen in my life. And the fact that these guys could watch that tournament, go back and watch that tournament and then say, "Oh, you know what? This is a bad idea. Let's destroy this conference." What? That's a conference you should be celebrating. It's a conference you should be touting that conference, saying this is college basketball.
Exactly.
And it was college basketball. And it's unfortunate. But you know what? The fans are still going to cheer. The fans are still going to put money into this thing. And it's just too bad that, the greed supersedes the fans. And that's generally what happens in sports, bro. It's just we're at an all-time high with capitalism in this country just ruling over, nostalgia and, genuinity. It's just there's nothing left. There's no authenticity to college basketball any longer. It's just a matter of the dollar.
It's the almighty dollar.
And
these money-grubbing losers in the NCAA want to tell me that a football game between Pittsburgh and Boston College, I'm supposed to value that more than what you get out of the Big East tournament in basketball in the past. It's ridiculous. That's what I'm losing this conference for, is so I can watch Syracuse up in the Carrier Dome in a half-empty place play against Boston College in a college football game. Or it's ridiculous. It's crap. It's absolute crap. And then to go and watch the American Conference, which you got UConn, Louisville out of the old Big East in this tournament, to play at that mausoleum of FedEx Forum. That tournament was a joke. There was no life in that building at all.
Nope.
That game would have been a totally different feel and a totally different kind of game if it was played at the Garden.
Damn right.
Then you get the ACC tournament in Greensboro. That game had no life in it at all.
No,
that Virginia Duke game. I mean, there was a lot of Virginia fans because it was such a long time coming for them. That was the only energy in that building was coming from Virginia. Mm-hmm. Those games were a joke. That ACC tournament, you can put all the blue bloods you want into one conference, and that was a secondary tournament to Providence playing Creighton. If you asked me what I wanted to watch, I would have rather watched Providence play Creighton rather than Duke play Virginia in that conference title game in the ACC, and that's not what college basketball thought they were getting when they made all these changes. But they go by the almighty dollar and the football dollar that blazes the trail for everything else in college sports. And like you said, it's a corrupt organization, and it's led by people who see only one thing.
That's right. Well, hopefully it backfires on them, and hopefully they make some changes and they come to their senses. Until then, we have what we have, unfortunately. But we're up against a break here. We got to take a break here on All Noise Radio. Great segment there, partner. Take a deep breath.
Buddy. Yeah, we'll come back. We'll get off our soapboxes on the break, and we'll actually do some fun things and predict some first and second round games.
There you go, on All Noise Radio.
Shook up ramen?
Yeah, soup.
Freeze. A call to the library could help her out. Good thing T-Mobile lets her call whenever she wants. Go.
It says here, pour some sugar on me. I'm hot, sticky, sweet.
Mm-hmm.
The most one-ever minutes, free long distance and roaming. Only from T-Mobile.
Get more.
Looking to get in on the action of some fun, exciting hockey this weekend? Well, join Zuki and Ruggs at the Women's NCAA Frozen Four live at the TD Bank North Center in Hamden, Connecticut. 4 of the nation's top teams battle for the national championship in women's ice hockey, beginning Friday with the 2 national semifinals. At 5 o'clock, number 1 ranked Minnesota Golden Gophers play the number 4 ranked Wisconsin Badgers. And in the nightcap at 8 p.m., you got the Knights of Clarkson playing against the Lakers of Mercyhurst out of Erie, Pennsylvania. Practices are open to the public and begin on Thursday and also Saturday for the 2 surviving teams. You can also view practice. It's an open practice to the public. And Sunday afternoon is the national championship game at 3 p.m. So come on out and join Zuki and Ruggs. Ticket packages start as low as $25 for single game sessions. And we hope to see you there, everybody.
This is the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, and you're listening to the All Noise Radio Network. Now back to my main man, the Zuki and Ruggs Show.
Back on the Zuki and Ruggs Show. We're here to break down your NCAA tournament brackets so you can be the king of your office pools.
Yahoo, perfect bracket, $1 billion.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, if you want to be Warren Buffett's new best friend and win his $1 billion bracket, if you get our brackets and you hit $1 billion, we're coming to look for you.
Yeah, at least 25%. I'm coming to break some legs, no doubt about it.
Well, hopefully, if you follow our brackets, that means we won also. But
that's true.
I doubt very much that Zuki and Ruggs will have the exact same bracket, though. So
yeah, probably not.
Listen to me. Go with mine.
I would.
We are gonna. I'm
piggybacking. Yeah,
the Zookster knows a lot. Don't let him fool you. He came home with a satchel from Las Vegas. With all his winnings.
Yeah. I got the Phillies winning the World Series, 40-1, baby.
To show that I have complete and utter confidence in the Zookster, he is going to kick us off the South bracket and start it off right now.
All right, everyone. I'm going right to the South bracket, taking place in good old Memphis, Tennessee, home of Elvis and Jerry the King Lawler. First game we got there is the number 1 seeded Florida Gators, who many are picking to win the national championship, and for good reasons. I should preface this by saying tomorrow night we got Albany taking on Mount St. Mary's for the unenviable task to face the Florida Gators, just to say that they made it to the tournament to get crushed. I've got Albany winning the game, and obviously I'm not going to spend too much time on them. I got Florida beating Albany, or Mount St. Mary's, doesn't matter. Florida's going to crush them. So enough of that game. Going on to the more interesting games. The 8-9 game, Colorado-Pitt. I'm going to go with Pitt. I mean, you got Colorado, they're anchored by forward Josh Scott, who's averaging 14 points a game, 8.5 rebounds a game, and guard Askia Booker, who's averaging 14 points a game. Both those guys stepped up after the entry to Spencer Dinwiddie. Pitt is powered by Lamar Patterson and big man Talib Zana. I just think Pitt's just a little bit more physical than Colorado. I wouldn't shock me at all if Pitt were to fall to Colorado. Colorado, of course, is a team that me and Ruggs picked as a dark horse to win the Pac-12, and they let us down. But we don't hold grudges. I'm not doing that because I hold a grudge. But I'm going to go with Pitt here, but wouldn't surprise me at all if Colorado pulled it off. The 5-12 game, this could be a game that you could circle for an upset. I won't. I will still go with VCU, Shaka Smart, Virginia Commonwealth there. Stephen F. Austin, the Lumberjacks have won 27 games in a row. I was
going to say second longest streak behind Wichita State.
Yeah, it's unreal. These guys are rolling. That could be dangerous for VCU. But the thing that disconcerted me and kind of got me off their bandwagon was they have a weak RPI. They only played 2 games against top 100 teams. That was Towson and a loss to Texas. They got a hell of a player in Jacob Parker. He's a 6'6 junior. He averaged 14.2 points a game. And he was a Southland Conference Player of the Year. And then you look at VCU. It's their 4th straight trip to the tournament. They lost in the A-10 final. They got a hell of a player in Travion Graham, who's averaging a little bit over 15 points a game and 5 rebounds a game. And they got my man Javante Reddick, who's at about 12 points a game and 8.5 rebounds a game. I really think VCU is going to be in for a battle. I'm gonna go with VCU. But if you guys want to get a little bracket buster, maybe the Lumberjacks are your team. Moving on to the 4-13 game, another interesting game. We got UCLA, the Pac-12 champions, led by first-year coach Steve Alford, who really spurned New Mexico last year. We all remember this is where I want to be, and then a month later going to UCLA. But nevertheless, a tremendous head basketball coach who's got a hot wife, by the way. Google her. And do yourself a favor. But he's done a great job there in UCLA, obviously winning the Pac-12 tourney, which, consisted of impressive wins over Oregon, Stanford, and, of course, Arizona in the final. They've got a hell of a player there in guard Jordan Adams, 17 points a game. And they got forward Kyle Anderson, who's at about 15 points a game and almost 9 rebounds a game. So they got tremendous talent on that team. Looking at Tulsa, they're your Conference USA champions. And, of course, they've got a familiar face there, anchoring their bench, and head coach Danny Manning. We all remember him. He was a hell of a professional player, and then also has a little bit of tourney magic in 1988 with the Kansas Jayhawks there. Looking at Tulsa, I like them. They're a hell of a team. They got some credibility, but the one thing that kind of got to me was they're 1-3 against RPI top 50 teams. That was kind of a little worrisome for me. And I mean, let's be honest, Conference USA is not exactly a major conference. So in that regard, that kind of nullifies them as an upset candidate there. So I'm going to go with UCLA to win that game. But Tulsa's got some players. Look out for this kid, James Woodard, 15.7 points a game, and forward Rashad Smith, also averaging about 12 points a game. So we'll see if Tulsa can pull it off, but going with the Bruins of UCLA. Then you got the 6-11 game here, which I think is going to be another tremendous ball game. Got Dayton versus Ohio State. I'm going to go with Dayton. I really like Dayton to pull off the upset here. The 11 against the 6. You know, Dayton's, it's pretty funny, pretty ironic. Dayton's got a guard named Jordan Seibert, who's actually having a pretty good year. He's averaging 12.5 for Dayton. He transferred from Ohio State. He was a pretty big reason for Ohio State making it to the Sweet 16 there a couple of years ago, coming off the bench. But now he's a big player for Dayton. Now he's going to try to stick it to his former college there and stick it to Ohio State. You know, and Dayton is 10-2 in their last 12 games. They've got a player in Devin Oliver. Is averaging 12 and 7.5 rebounds a game, and Dyshawn Pierre, who's averaging 11 points and about 5.5 rebounds per game to power the front court. I really like Dayton. I mean, you look at Ohio State. You know, this is not the Ohio State team that made the finals when they had Greg Oden and Mike Conley Jr. This is not that team. They're 10-8 in the Big Ten. That's their worst record since the 04-05 season. But they do have a backcourt of Aaron Kraft. You know, he's 9.5 points a game, 4.7 assists a game. You got Lenzel Smith Jr., who's about 11 points a game. You know, they do have history together. This is their 4th tournament together, those two. So they do have some continuity. They know how to play together. They've got some experience. So if you want to pull the experience card, you want to go with Ohio State, that's cool. That's respectable, fine. I just like Dayton. I think Dayton's got more talent. I think Dayton's got something rolling here. Also look out for LaQuinton Ross from Ohio State. He's averaging 15 points a game, 6 rebounds a game. Pretty good player there. The 3-14, you got Western Michigan against Syracuse. Western Michigan, of course, won the MAC. The funny thing about Western Michigan, people, and this makes it tricky. You got to watch out for Western Michigan here. Teams that were ranked from 101 to 200 in the RPI, they were 3-5, but they were 7-4 against top 100 teams. So Western Michigan's kind of dangerous. You know, if you look at those stats. Also, they got a lot of seniors on their team. You know, they got guard David Brown, who's averaging a little over 19 points a game, and they got Shane Whittington, who's 16-9. So let me tell you something. I'm not gonna pick them. I'm gonna stick with the orange. But let me tell you, Jim Boeheim better get his guys a little turbo shot in their coffee because, you know, they've hit the skids here down the stretch, okay? They were 25-0 to start the season, and they're 2-5 since. 2-5. With losses to BC, who ended up 8-24, and Georgia, who was 16-17. Not good. Tyler Ennis and CJ Fair, wakey. Time to get up now. Okay. You guys didn't want to go into the tournament undefeated? Understood. Fine, that's one thing I said here.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah, to say the very least. So, you know, they better step up here. I do believe Syracuse does win the game, though. Stanford, New Mexico. Stanford's 10-8 in the Pac-12. And the thing about Stanford that's really worrisome, again, they're not deep. They got 4 guys who average 32 minutes a game. You know, so usually when you look at national title contending teams, they're deep. Stanford is not. So they rely heavily on their starters. You got a top scoring guard in Chasson Randall. He's averaging 18.7 a game, and you got forward Josh Hustis, who's at 11.4 per game and 8.3 rebounds a game. He's a top rebounder of the team. And you look at the New Mexico Lobos, who really did well. I mean, they won the Mountain West. I was really impressed with their defense.
Another team I don't think was seeded highly enough.
I agree, Ruggs. I was thinking.
Team.
Well said. I was thinking the same thing, partner. They're 15-2 since January 15th with 2 wins over San Diego State. Their last Sweet 16 appearance came in 1974, though, so that's a problem with New Mexico. They haven't had very much good success in this tournament. They've had 11 tourney bids since 1991. I think that'll change. I'm going to go with New Mexico to beat Stanford here. And, they have a pair of seniors that anchor the squad and guard Kendall Williams and Australian forward Cameron Bairstow. Bairstow was averaging 20 points a game and 7.5 boards a game. You got Kendall Williams at 16.5. So, I'm gonna roll with New Mexico to take that one, and then Kansas, Eastern Kentucky. Not gonna spend too much time there. Gonna go with Kansas, just too big, too strong. I mean, you talking about Kansas? They average 40.5 rebounds a game, folks. Where Eastern Kentucky only averages 28.9, so 29 rebounds a game. Red flag right there, if you ask me. Kansas also averages almost 6 blocks a game, whereas Eastern Kentucky's at 2. Kansas, 12 wins over the RPI top 50. They're going to be missing Joel Embiid. Is that how you say his name?
Yeah.
Embiid.
And they're hoping he's back for the Sweet 16 round, perhaps.
Yes, exactly. He's expected to miss the first weekend with his back injury. Missed the number 1 pick in the draft. Andrew Wiggins is going to have to step up, along with Perry Ellis, not the designer Perry Ellis, okay? Problem is, KU is 2-2 without Embiid this year, but I don't think they're going to be threatened against Eastern Kentucky. I got Kansas, so there you go. I got Florida and Pitt meeting. I got VCU, UCLA, Dayton versus Syracuse, New Mexico, Kansas. Ruggs, what do you got out west, partner?
All right, partner. We got starting off with the top seed in Arizona, and they're going to play Weber State, who in the past has pulled off an upset or two. They had Harold the Show Arsenault a few years ago knock out North Carolina in a well-remembered upset. This team isn't as good as that year's edition, though, and they're a 16 for a reason, and I think they're going to get rolled over by Arizona. Interesting 8-9 game. You got Gonzaga as the 8, Oklahoma State as the 9. I'm high on the Big 12 this year. It's going to reflect in my picks, and when you break it all down, it comes down to who's got the best player on the floor, and I believe that's Marcus Smart of Oklahoma State. And I'm going to take them to move on and eliminate Gonzaga. Down in the 5-12 matchup, you got another Big 12 team in Oklahoma against a dangerous team in North Dakota State. They're one of those 12s that can pose a real threat for Oklahoma. Oklahoma, though, has got a lot of options to score. They're a very dynamic, explosive team, and I like the pedigree out of the Big 12 this year. I think they're going to advance. San Diego State, the Aztecs, very athletic team. Great rebounding team, defensively very sound. They're going to get New Mexico State. They just got finished playing New Mexico in the Mountain West Conference Tournament final, and now they'll get the Aggies of New Mexico State. I like Fisher's group. I'm going to take San Diego State to march on there. Down in the 6-11 matchup in the bottom half of the bracket, you got another Big 12 team. A lot of Big 12 teams laden in these conferences because they got a lot of bids, let's face it. And it was well-deserved, I thought. Well, they got to play an 11th seed in Nebraska, who was the team that came out of the Big 12 and marched on to the Big 10, which I went through the whole Big 12 thing last week.
I laughed at that when I heard it. Yeah, that was pretty good.
But wherever you put Nebraska, they're a tough team. They were one of those teams, though, that was one of the last ones to get in and maybe or maybe not is deserving of the bid. They did have a good late season run. They had a big win over over Wisconsin late in the year, who's also in this half of the bracket. And I thought that was what really jump-started, got them in. They did blow a big lead in the conference tournament to Ohio State, which I think would have even more cemented their place in there, and they let that go. That worries you a little. Baylor's got a lot of offensive power, really gets up and down the floor. Nebraska wants to play a little more half-court, a little more under control. In the NCAA tournament, it's tough to predict tempo. A lot of times that's all it takes to determine who's going to win is who can control the tempo. I'm going to take Baylor here. I like the way they can hit shots from the outside and get it inside. If the game gets up-tempo, I like their athletes a lot better. I'm going to take Baylor to march on. But Nebraska is very, very dangerous here. A lot of people are picking Nebraska. I'm going to take Baylor, however. Down in the next matchup, another game that's sneakily could be dangerous. You got Louisiana Lafayette as a 14 seed. That's a little bit of an unknown. They've had some tournament appearances before and performed pretty well. But they got to play the 3rd seed Creighton out of the Big East here. And they might be a little bit angry they didn't win the Big East Conference tournament. They had a feel going in that they were the favorite, especially when Villanova went down, and they didn't get it done. They got the best player, maybe in college basketball, but certainly in this game, in McDermott. I don't think he's going to let them lose this game. I think he wakes up. And remember, Creighton, this is a little different. Wichita State's in this boat also. They're teams that are used to being called mid-majors, and they're used to being small. They're not going to take anybody lightly. They're not going to go in and say, we're a big conference team now, and Louisiana's a 14. We're just going to sweep by them. No, they take everybody seriously when they match up in these games because these programs know what it's like to not be considered to be a big-time basketball team. So Creighton, I think, will be up for Louisiana Lafayette and knock them out in advance. Then you got an interesting 7-10, and I know Zuki and I talked a lot about this game before, kind of split on it. It's a very difficult game to pick. You got Oregon, who is Jekyll and Hyde.
Yep.
Out of the big conference of the Pac-12, and then you got BYU, who's coming out of the West Coast Conference and is the 10th seed.
I ran into the Oregon team actually in Vegas. They were coming into right after I got off the phone with you, all the teams started checking in.
Nice.
They were walking through the the casino there at the MGM Grand. It was pretty cool, actually. I saw a lot of those guys. So I saw the Utes actually walked by me of Utah. It was pretty cool, actually. I actually wanted, I wish I could have seen them after their game. I would have said, hey, guys, you guys showed up. Would you guys party too hard in Vegas?
Yeah, because we thought they'd make a little bit of a statement.
I thought so.
At the Pac-12 tournament, and it didn't happen. They got through their first-round matchup across state rival Oregon State, and they beat them pretty well, but then they had to play UCLA, and I thought this was an upset potential game, and they didn't get it done.
Yeah.
Maybe they've saved it for this situation, and they're going to play BYU. And if I got Oregon winning this game, I think they're more talented. BYU is not a great NCAA tournament team. They never have been. Just another thing to throw at you there. I mean, it doesn't, again, past things don't matter, but there is a reason that there's trends happen in the NCAA tournament over the years, and I think it's going to show again, and I like Oregon to go. But I'm looking at Oregon as a 7. They were a very late team to really make the tournament. They were not even considered going into the Pac-12 tournament as to be a bubble team, and all they did was beat Oregon State, which they should have, and they got in. And they got in as a 7. And UConn is a 7. Come on. Mexico is a 7.
Yeah.
Where were these guys' heads when they were drawing up this?
It's so funny. I got to hear Ralph Shaheen on, again, he's like, oh, these guys watch every game. I'm like, yeah, go away. Stop it. Just shut up. Yeah, I'm sure you sat there and watched every game throughout the season, and just stop.
So if you want a couple of teams that could have been out and SMU could have been in for, Stanford was one that Zook talked about a minute ago. They were borderline getting in the tournament. They were squarely on the bubble going in. And again, all they did was get to the semifinals of the Pac-12. They didn't win it. They didn't get to the championship game. They just got to the semifinals and got pretty soundly beaten by UCLA. So they didn't impress me very much. They are in. And Oregon is a 7, I think, is a way overseed. A lot of people think they could be dangerous for Wisconsin in the round after that, because I think Wisconsin, I don't want to gloss over American here, but in the 2:15 game, I'm going to take Wisconsin. I think this could be a tough game for them. They're playing it at Milwaukee, though. There's another bone thrown to the...
wink, wink.
Jeez. I mean, I know you're playing these sub-quadrants, and again, I'd never liked this since they've done it. I've said that for... I don't even know how many years it's been done now. It's probably been 10 or 12 years. It seems like it's a new thing because I grew up with a region was a region, and that whole top half was all played in one location. The bottom half of the bracket was all played in another location. Now you got, like, we'll still take Buffalo, for example, we're going to talk about later on, where Villanova sub-regional is, and they're playing Milwaukee, and UConn's playing St. Joe's, and then somewhere from another whole part of the bracket in another region is going to play their games there. To me, that makes no sense at all. You should have one whole bracket in its entirety so you can see all the teams you're going to be playing down the road a couple of rounds, and everybody kind of is playing together. I don't understand why they do this. They do it to try. I know they're trying to fill the gyms with fans from those bases. They're trying to make it a little bit more convenient for the higher seeded teams and maybe make it more of an advantage for these teams. But if you're not going to do a great job in seeding the teams, then you're making a bad problem even worse. When they go play Oregon or BYU in the second round, and that's a close game coming down the stretch, and Wisconsin gets that burst of 15, 20,000 screaming fans and Badger Red there in Milwaukee, and that might put them over the top. To me, that stinks. I just there's no other way to put it. Now, Florida's playing in Orlando. Virginia's got their games in Raleigh. Villanova's playing in Buffalo. It's not really a huge edge there. Michigan is also playing, I believe, in that Milwaukee region. And Wichita State and Kansas, I believe, are both playing, if I'm not mistaken, in St. Louis, which is very local to both of those teams. And Arizona is playing in San Diego. I'm going to kick it over to Zook now. Some of these things really need to be addressed in the rules committee meetings, in the NCAA basketball meetings in the offseason, I believe. Zook's going to go and cover the East bracket now for you.
All right, brother. Well said. Looking at the East real quick, we got the 116, which is obvious. I won't spend too much time on it, but Coastal Carolina, the Chanticleers? Chanticleers, what a name, huh? They're your Big South champs. You know, they got Coach Cliff Ellis, who's guiding his 4th team, amazingly enough, to the tournament. He previously coached Auburn, Clemson, and South Alabama. He's got 3 Sweet 16 appearances on his resume. Pretty impressive there. They got a young kid there named Warren Gillis. He's a big swing man. He's averaging about 15 points a game. But the thing about Coastal Carolina, they don't own one victory over a top 150 opponent. And that's kind of a bad sign. Then they got to take on Virginia, who's just incredible. The ACC champions really did a great job there. yesterday. They really dominated Jabari Parker, holding him to 8 out of 24 shooting. I love their defense. And you're talking about a team who has, they call it the pack line defense. They held opponents to 55.1 points per game, the best in college basketball. Players to watch for Virginia, you got guard Malcolm Brogdon, and you got Joe Harris. I like Virginia to smoke Coastal Carolina there. And moving on to the 8-9 game, you got Memphis and George Washington. I'm going with George Washington, but I think it's going to be a pretty good game. You got George Washington, who did fall short in the Atlantic 10 tournament, but they played pretty well in their loss to VCU there. Colonials are expected to have a big return there, and forward Keithon Savage, the Macho Man. Ooh, yeah. He's back from a broken foot. He hasn't played since January 18th. They're getting him right back in time for this game, and that could be huge for them. And that's actually a deciding factor for me. That's kind of the reason I did lean towards GW to get the victory. I mean, and then you got the big man, Isaiah Armwood, who really impressed me. I was watching him this past weekend. I was like, wow, this kid looks like a pro. And they got 5 players on GW that average double-doubles. They're really well-balanced. And now you want to look at Memphis on the flip side. They're 4-4 down the stretch. They've got some history. This is their 8th appearance in the tournament in the last 9 years. In their 4 wins, though, this is the thing that's really tricky about Memphis. 2 of those wins are against Louisville and SMU. Memphis is tricky. They went 4-7 against top 50 teams. So Memphis is really night and day. It is really hard to gauge this game, which is why I think it's going to be a game. If you're a college basketball fan, you're not going to want to miss. I'm going to go with GW to win that game. Then moving on to the 12-5 game, Cincinnati against Harvard. I'm actually going to go with Harvard. This is my one big upset. I'm going Harvard. Cincy's obviously got a tremendous team anchored by Sean Kilpatrick, who should be playing in the NBA. I mean, he's an All-America candidate. Since he was 5-4 in their final 9 games, which is kind of worrisome. You got Harvard with Tommy Amaker, who's just one of the best coaches in all of college basketball. They only have 2 losses to RPI top 50 teams this year. They're anchored by swingman Wesley Saunders, who's a hell of a player. I'm going to go with Harvard over Cincy there. Moving on to the 4-13 game. Michigan State, Delaware. Delaware, they won the CAA. It was a hell of a victory, a really thrilling game. But unfortunately for them, because of the bad seeding, winning that conference, they get a date with number 4, quote unquote, Michigan State. So really a raw deal for the Fighting Blue Hens there.
So it's funny that you say that, because if you put them in New Mexico State's place or Tulsa's place, I'd give them a real shot, because they're a good team.
Well said.
Michigan State's
exactly. It's a raw deal for the Fighting Blue Hens of Delaware there. It's their first tournament appearance since 1999. They're powered by all-conference first-teamers. They got a hell of a team. I mean, you got Devin Sater and Devon Usher. Unfortunately, one red flag for them. They're 0-3 against top 50 teams this year. And Michigan State, I mean, what else can you say? They're the consensus pick, or the sexy pick right now to win the whole thing. I mean, they rolled all the way to that Big Ten title in impressive fashion. I mean, I was blown away, as everybody else was, with Michigan State. Adrian Payne looks like he'll be playing in the NBA. He looks like a player.
He is. He's a man among boys.
Yeah, he sure is. And Gary Harris, I mean, they are an incredible duo. They really are. Just too big, too fast, just too good. Moving on to a more interesting game. The 6th North Carolina taking on number 11 Providence, the Big East champs. They're looking to win their first game since '97. So it's been a long time for the Friars since they won a big tourney game. They're senior led. They got a pair of seniors there in Bryce Cotton and forward Kadeem Batts, who are both all Big East players. 3-6 against top 50 teams. 2 of their wins were against Creighton, whereas North Carolina, I mean, they're really tough. They're another team really hard to gauge. I mean, because they have losses to Belmont and UAB. So you're looking like, ugh, really, ew. And then you look at the flip side, and they got wins over Louisville, Duke, Kentucky, and Michigan State. Will the real North Carolina please stand up? I mean, it's really nuts. They were on a 12-game winning streak before they lost the back-to-back. They lost back-to-back games to Duke and Pitt, before the ACC tournament. So it's really tough to gauge. I mean, they got two great players in Marcus Page and James McAdoo. I think it's going to be a damn good game, but I'm going to go with North Carolina to wake up and win the game. Then you got the 3 and the 14, the 3rd-seeded Iowa State taking on NC Central. Obviously, Iowa State, the Big 12 champs. They have a high-octane offense. We know that. They have a damn hell of an offense. They're fun to watch, led by guard DeAndre Kane And forwards Melvin Ejim and George Niang.
Who's from Dillon, Massachusetts.
There you go. They're going to be a tough out in this tournament. They're really going to be a nightmare to face. The NC Central Eagles are on a 20-game winning streak. That's their opponent. You know, they're not garbage. That's for sure. I mean, they won their conference, the MEAC. They got a hell of a player in Jeremy Ingram. He's averaging over 20 points a game. Still going to stick with Iowa State to take them out and go on to the next round. Then you got the 7 and the 10, as we've covered. The UConn, the raw deal 7 seed there, taking on St. Joe's. I will say this will be a good game. St. Joe's is resurgent, probably the best team that Coach Phil Martelli's had in over a decade since he has Jameer Nelson there. You know, just taking a quick look at UConn here, they got wins over Florida. They've beaten Cincinnati twice, and they've beaten Memphis thrice. Their star player doesn't need any introduction. Shabazz Napier, he had a hell of a season on his way to becoming the American Conference Player of the Year there. And then you got St. Joe's. They're the Atlantic 10 champs. They're 9-12 in their last 11 games, so they're rolling right now, led by Langston Galloway and Ronald Roberts Jr. Should be a hell of a game. I'm going to stick with the UConn Huskies, though. I think UConn will take the game and move on. And then you got the 2 and the 15, Villanova taking on the University of Milwaukee. Going to go with Nova here. Now, Nova's coming off a bad loss to Seton Hall. I like them to win this game here. You know, UW won the Horizon. They won their conference, but they got a good they got a good senior guard there in Jordan Aaron and big man Matt Tibby. I like Nova to win that, and that'll actually set up an old Big East game, from the round 3. So, against UConn if it goes my way. So I got Virginia, GW over Memphis, so Virginia versus Memphis. I got Harvard over Cincy, Michigan State over Delaware, North Carolina over Providence, Iowa State over NC Central, UConn over St. Joe's, and Villanova over UW. And I'm going to kick it over to Ruggs really quickly for the and he's going to run down the Midwest bracket for you.
Thanks, Zook. Real quick, I didn't want to interrupt you as you were going, but we were talking about Iowa State. Last time they were really highly seeded and played a MEAC team in the first round, it was Hampton and 215, and they got beat. I don't know if you remember that game.
I do. That's
carrying
right.
The coach off the. I just remember them lifting the coach in the air by the midsection there and have him over their head. I just remember.
I do remember that.
All right, I got the Midwest, which is ranked by insiders as the toughest of the regions, and they're taking the RPIs and BPIs and all those other indexes and figuring it out by then. Very interesting because your number 1 seed is Wichita State, the undefeated Shockers of Wichita State, and they're going to get in the first round the winner of Cal Poly, who's at a robust 13-19, and they're going to play Texas Southern. Now, interesting game here, and I've waffled on this one because they couldn't be more different, these two teams. I am actually I'm leaning now toward the way Zook was talking. He kind of talked me into taking Texas Southern. And what I just thought of, the reason why is last year the SWAC champion was Southern University, which is in Texas also. They played number 1 Gonzaga, who was kind of a 1 seed that really a lot of people didn't think should be a 1 seed, which is going to be what this case a lot of people don't think Wichita State should be a 1 seed. And Southern had Gonzaga as a 16-1, had them down very late in that game.
I remember that, yeah.
We were actually here during that. Anyway, that was a very scary game. Southern almost pulled it off against Gonzaga, so I'm going to go with Texas Southern. I think Wichita State's better than last year's Gonzaga team, and I don't think Texas Southern is as good as last year's Southern team, but could be an interesting game. Wichita State's they're going to feel the pressure whenever they get in any time close in these games. They're going to feel the pressure. They're going to have that undefeated. They're going to have that you don't belong here kind of pressure coming from the media and from within to get it done. So if that game's close, you got to worry about the tightness factor setting in. But I'm going to take Wichita State to get on there. Wasn't enamored with their coach's press conference after, where the wolves don't care what the sheep think. Kind of. I don't know if you heard that. That was
I did.
Came off as a little.
Win a title first, then you can talk like that.
When you're wolves, you might see some wolves in round 2 because
yes, you will.
Or round
yes,
3,
you will.
Because you may get Calipari's bunch with the 4 or 5 NBA first round draft picks that they're going to.
And then if you get to the Sweet 16, you might face the defending champion. So
exactly. So they made sure the road was pretty tough for Wichita State. Yeah. They didn't get done any favors by the committee. So anyway, you got Kentucky, Kansas State, which isn't a walkthrough. Kansas State's a solid team out of the Big 12. They can do a lot of damage defensively. They're a big team. Kentucky is a lot of young guys. They can be hit or miss whether they show up or not. They really brought it to the SEC tournament. You wonder if Calipari can get them turned around. They have so many athletes, though. You can't look at this team and not take them. Just passing the eye test, I like Kentucky to march on in that 8-9 game. Then St. Louis, they've been fading down the stretch. They're the 5 seed. They're the Atlantic 10 regular season champions. They got bounced by St. Bonaventure in the quarterfinals of the A-10 tournament at the Barclays Center. They're going to get the winner of NC State and Xavier. That's a really good toss-up matchup right there. That's a tough game to call. The game's in Dayton. You're going to have a lot of support for Xavier there. I think you're going to get an old A-10 rematch here, and Xavier's going to march on and play St. Louis to me in that game. And then I think they're going to go on and actually beat them. I like Xavier to knock out St. Louis and advance to round 3, and their reward is going to play Louisville, because I think Louisville is going to march on over the Jaspers of Manhattan. Very good conference, the MAC. Zuki and I went to a couple games this year and watched locally with Quinnipiac here. And, there's some good clubs in that league. Iona, Manhattan, Quinnipiac, Canisius, a lot of good teams. So this is not an easy game, but Louisville is just red hot right now. Patino's got his guys playing well. Badly underseeded team, as is Michigan State. As the 4s, we've kind of beaten this issue to death. Even San Diego State can make a case they could be higher than a 4. So I like Louisville to get by Manhattan there and set up that matchup with Xavier. And in the bottom half of the bracket, first you got to settle who's going to be the 11 seed and represent between Iowa and Tennessee. Very tough game again to call. These matchups are real close. You kind of got a mediocre team out of the Big Ten playing a mediocre team out of the SEC. It's just going to be who wants it more, who shows up to play. My gut feeling is it's going to be Tennessee that wins this game. Again, I like UMass though to beat the winner. I think UMass, very underrated team. Atlantic 10, I talked about it last week, is underrated as a whole. I think they don't get enough credit. The NCAA did do a good job, give the A-10 credit and put 6 of their teams in there. I was pleasantly surprised by that. They took Dayton in and obviously seeded their teams pretty well. UMass getting a 6 here, which is actually probably a little higher than I thought they'd go. And I believe they're going to march on over Tennessee. Then you got Duke and Mercer. They're dangerous, 14. Duke, to me, is overrated.
Yep.
I don't love them. They do have Jabari Parker, and I think he's going to be enough to get them through. But Mercer, they outdueled Florida Gulf Coast, who was last year's darlings, in the conference tournament title game, and they played that game at Florida Gulf Coast in their home gym and got out of there with a win, and they were the better team. I watched that game. They were the better team. I'm sure Krzyzewski, he'll have his guys ready to go, but there's another possible upset alert if you wanted a big upset there. Could be. And again, Duke, if they get through that, they got to play UMass. Down in the 7-10, you got Texas and Arizona State. Zuki and I differ a little on this one. I'm going with Texas. I just like Rick Barnes in the tournament. He's got so much more experience winning tournament games, and I like the Big 12 better than the Pac-12, so I'm going to take Texas to march on. And they're going to play, I believe, Michigan, but Wofford is another team out of 15 that could be dangerous. They're a very athletic team. Michigan, to me, is a little overseeded and didn't love the way they played in that. I mean, you get your arch rival, Michigan State, cross-state rival, big packed building for the Big Ten championship, and they played the way they played. I mean, Michigan State's good, and they are a better team. Even though Michigan did win 2 meetings in the regular season against Michigan State, to get rolled the way they doesn't speak a lot of how they're entering the tournament. I know they were in the finals last year, and they can make a run at any time, and Beeline's done a great job with this program as a whole and turned a football school into a basketball school, because to be honest with you, their basketball teams outperformed their football team in the past few years.
Oh, yes.
So that's just a culture change up in Ann Arbor right there. I'm going to take Michigan to survive Wofford, and pretty good football/basketball matchup coming up in the round after that against Texas. And that's my that's round 2 for me in the Midwest. We'll go rapid fire through.
Yeah, we'll go. Yeah, exactly. We broke down some teams here. Great job, partner. Real quick, I'm just going to run down here. Going back to the South, I'm going to go with Florida to beat Pitt and get to the Sweet 16. I had VCU facing UCLA. I'm going to go with the UCLA Bruins to win that game. To face Florida in the Sweet 16. The next week we'll give you our predictions. I had Dayton-Syracuse facing off. I got Syracuse moving on to the Sweet 16. New Mexico-Kansas facing off, which is going to be a great game if it happens. I'm going to go with the Jayhawks. So in the South, I got Florida facing UCLA Syracuse, Kansas in the Sweet 16. Then I'll move right down to the East. I had Virginia facing off against GW in round 3. I'm going to go with the Cavaliers here to move on to the Sweet 16. I really like what I'm seeing from Virginia. Love that defense. Even though GW is very talented. Then moving down, I had Harvard facing Michigan State. Going to go with the Spartans here. They're rolling. And that'll set up an epic game between Virginia and Michigan State. That is a game I hope happens. It's going to be one of the most entertaining games of the tournament. Then moving right down, I had North Carolina facing off against Iowa State. I'm going to go with Iowa State. I just really like what I'm seeing from them right now. They're just consistent. They're just well-balanced. North Carolina, again, just too eclectic. I don't know what you're going to get from them. I think Iowa State's running on guts here, and I like what I'm seeing from them. They've got a lot of substance. So I'm going to go with Iowa State to make it to the Sweet 16. And in an old Big East matchup, I had UConn facing off against Villanova. I'm going to go with the Huskies. I just think they're a better team right now. Overall, I think Shabazz Napier can carry the UConn Huskies to the Sweet 16. So out of the East, I got Virginia facing Michigan State, Iowa State facing UConn, which will be another great game. And I'll just give my predictions real quick. I got Arizona, San Diego State, and Baylor, Wisconsin coming out of the West to go to the Sweet 16. I got Arizona beating Gonzaga. I got San Diego State beating Oklahoma. So I got Arizona facing San Diego State. I got Baylor beating Creighton in round 3. So I got Baylor going to the Sweet 16. And I had Wisconsin over BYU. So I got the Wisconsin Badgers going to the Sweet 16. So in the West, got Arizona, San Diego State, Baylor versus Wisconsin. And in the Midwest, I got the Shockers going to the Sweet 16. I got them beating Kentucky in round 3. And I got the defending champion Louisville knocking off North Carolina State. I got to backtrack a little bit. I've got NC State beating Xavier in the round 1 game to get in. And I got NC State then being the 12, knocking off St. Louis, who's a 5. But then I got their magical run, of course, getting crushed by Louisville. And then the last games here, I got UMass beating Duke. So I got UMass going to the Sweet 16, and I've got Michigan beating Arizona State. I've got AZ State beating Texas, which is going to be another great game, as Ruggs pointed out earlier a few minutes ago. Really going to be a good game. And I got Michigan beating AZ State. So out of the Midwest, I got Wichita State facing Louisville, UMass, Michigan.
Nice job, brother. I don't need to go over Zuki's half of the bracket because I have the exact same Sweet 16 with Florida, UCLA, Syracuse, Kansas, Virginia, Michigan State, Iowa State, and UConn. So
there you go.
I'll just get right into start with the West. Mm-hmm. I'm going to take Arizona to beat Oklahoma State, although I think that's a very dangerous game for number 1 Arizona. They cannot sleep on Marcus Smart. I like Oklahoma to beat San Diego State. That's a difference with Zook's bracket there. I just like the way – I think they're the hotter team right now, and I just like the way they push tempo. And I think San Diego State is a team that really tends to struggle when they have to get out of the half-court comfort zone. They don't shoot the ball all that well. That's always a problem with teams in the NCAA tournament going real far. It's tough when you don't have that guy that just knocks it down from the outside, and I think Oklahoma has a couple guys that can really stroke the ball. And San Diego State struggles there, but they got to be careful they don't get killed on the glass because San Diego State tends to do that to teams. Baylor and Creighton, I'm going with Creighton. I like the magic of McDermott. I'm going to go with him. I think he's still the best player on the floor. In the bottom of the bracket, I reluctantly am taking Wisconsin, a team I'm not in love with, but I'm going to take them over Oregon. I had Oregon beating BYU. The games are in Milwaukee, and in a close game late when they need that little push from the crowd, I think they'll get it there and they'll march on. But when they have to leave the comfort of Milwaukee to play in the regionals, it could be a whole different story for them. Now down in the bottom of the bracket, I think Kentucky's knocking Wichita State out. If they had played early in the year, I'm going all the way Wichita State because Kentucky just wasn't ready to go. But I liked what I saw in the SEC title game. They almost beat a Florida team that I actually have going all the way. Calipari's pretty good at getting his guys motivated when it's NCAA tournament time. I liked Louisville getting past matchup from a couple years ago in the Final Four when they played Kentucky. I think they're going to get them again, and obviously they play every year and they're hated rivals of each other, and I think they'll get another chance to play, which is always
fun.
It's always fun when those two teams get together and you get Calipari and Pitino playing each other. Bottom half of the bracket, I'd love to take UMass. Not that being a UConn grad, I'm not a huge fan of UMass, but Jabari Parker still is Jabari Parker. He's a great player. First round.
Probably number one. Might be the number 1 pick in the draft.
Could be. If Wiggins isn't, he will be. UMass doesn't have anybody that's just, can take a game over. they're going to have to do it as a team and keep the game close to the vest, and they're capable of doing it. Wouldn't shock me if they did it. Like I said, I wouldn't even be shocked if Duke doesn't get by Mercer, but I'm going to take Duke here. I think they got to. Not only did they get overseeded, perhaps. I mean, they were a top 10 team, so I can't say they're overseeded. 3 is fair for them.
That's fair for Duke, yeah.
But they got a really nice little draw. I mean, they're not a great team, and they could get very far just because they don't play any tremendous teams. I think they're going to end up getting Michigan. I think Michigan will survive that game with Texas, but that's another one that I could see going the way of the higher-seeded team. I'm sorry, of the lower-seeded team. That's my Sweet 16. Duke, Michigan, Louisville, Kentucky in the Midwest, and Arizona, Oklahoma, Creighton, and Wisconsin in the West.
Very nice, Ruggs. Well, that's about all the time we have. Those are our picks. What I'm going to try to do is go to our Facebook page. What I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to take a picture of my bracket that I printed out from CBS here and post it up there. Not the whole thing, just up to the Sweet 16. Okay. So I'm not gonna ruin the surprise for everybody. I'm gonna put that up there so you guys can review it, critique it. We'll give our Sweet 16 and Elite 8 predictions. Thanks again for listening. Great job, partner. We'll talk to you guys next week here on All Noise Radio.
Good night, everybody.
All Noise Radio, powered by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting.
No, Kelly Clarkson!
Our music is awesome.